Hello, everybody. I'm Breadbeard with Softboy Social Club. Today we have with us a person I've really wanted to meet for a while now, actually. This is Yvette Felarca. If you don't know about Yvette Felarca, you can check some of the information in the description. Hello, everybody. Hold on. Let me make sure that's silenced. You can check the link in the description. Just as a warning for everybody who's watching today, since Yvette, your case is not completely finished yet, we won't be discussing any of the specific details of any of the events from June 2016 or any of her workplace information, things like that. If you do start to mention that stuff in the chat, you'll be kicked out. So probably best not to. Other than that, we do like to hear information and questions from the chat. If you have anything you want to ask, I'll try to get them to the top. This channel is not monetized, but you can send super chats to streamlabs.com/softboysocialclub. There's a link right down below me. And all of that will get you to the top, and I'll say your message, but all those funds will go directly to the Antifa International Defense Fund. So Yvette, how are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Are you you're staying safe, yeah?
I am, yeah. I'm quite lucky. So far, so good.
Yeah, I know California has really locked it down, which is a good thing, I think.
Yeah, the Bay Area, we went into lockdown, I think, earlier than anybody else. So for now, I think it's, made a big difference, but we still need a lot. We have a lot to go. We have like a lot farther to go.
Yeah, I'm lucky. I'm lucky. I guess there's some unluckiness to it. That I'm in Taiwan, where in East Asia's dealt with these before, with the SARS and the bird flu pandemics. So they were really prepared, really went into action right when it started to hit. And so of course that's not good that they've had to do that to have experience, but I'm lucky that I'm in a place where they really locked it down quick. Yeah, like I was telling you off air, we've had less than 52 domestic spread cases. Everything else was caught at the border. And from what I understand, considering the sizable population and density of the cities in California, you guys have done really well.
Yeah, it came early in California, the coronavirus. And so first we looked like a real hot zone, like very, very early on. And so I think that, some swift action and policy decision-making has really saved a lot of lives here, and is in real contrast to what Trump did on a level. Like
that's the biggest thing that can be done is just swift action, just not sitting around and hoping it'll get better.
Yeah, or lying about the problem because they want the stock market to be affected. And I mean, Trump completely was just looking to that. Not even that he cares that much about it. It's just for him. It was about his reelection in November.
Yeah, specifically, today here, but tomorrow for you folks is Easter, and this thing sure is fixed, isn't it, guys? Glad that was just a waited out thing.
Yep. Yeah. No, it is crazy. The cynicism is pretty jaw-breaking or jaw-dropping, and anyway, some people probably wish that Trump's jaw was broken over this, but I'm not.
Yeah, that would be a very interesting video game where you could do that to certain members of the political elites. I do not condone any violence. Just no violence, please.
That's right. Anyway. I'm sure some people have thought up lots of creative ways to vent their frustration and anger.
Yeah, there is this super cute video game someone made of an Antifa soldier. Like, it's like a side-scrolling kind of Mario style game where you got to jump over like fascists and knock them down. And I was gonna play it on this show for just a quick second to show people. I couldn't get it to work on my Mac. So But that's out there. Go. I can't remember the name of it. I'm sure you can find it, folks, out there if you want to check it out. Speaking of taking direct action, oh, and beforehand, let me. I don't think I gave this spiel right at the beginning. This is all for the Antifa International Defense Fund. If you were with us on the slowdown where we were talking with Walter, Jock Paul Freeman, and Star, who are just some amazing people doing amazing work. Walter is the admin for Antifa International. Star and Jock Paul Freeman were recipients of it, as I believe you were also a recipient, yes?
Yes, several times.
They do direct aid to help pay for fees incurred while doing Antifa action. If you want to donate to someone and you're not sure, there's so many places you could do help. This is definitely one where at least all the other ones are great. I'm not saying there's a lot of people doing a lot of good work, but this one, if you want to make sure your dollars are going directly to people in need, that is how this works. They put it all into a big pot. If you donate $20 or more, even just a one-time donation, though recurring is better, you get to be on the decisions committee. I'm on the decisions committee. You all get to vote to see who these funds should be allocated to. The money goes into a pot from all the donations. It gets used directly to the people who need it. It's not sitting in a pot and collecting interest or being used for all these different corporate things. It is direct aid for people doing direct action. So, yeah, sorry.
No, fine. I can't endorse them enough. I have to say, I am so grateful to them. They reached out to me. I'd never heard of them before. I mean, within 24 hours after, I think, the first negative attack that was made on me by my school district, after the whole protest against the fascists in Sacramento. And they didn't, they told me they couldn't, considering my circumstances, because I wasn't in a court case at that time, they couldn't donate to me, but they offered to help me crowdfund to raise money to help cover some of my legal costs. I'd never even heard of an organization that would offer to do that kind of thing. I mean, they were really, really, really great. And I went to a couple of other times after that, once I was arrested and once I was preparing for trial. And I mean, I cannot say enough about how absolutely, how much support they gave me and how grateful I am.
Yeah. And that's something I didn't say, is they also, a lot of times they reach out. They're actively searching for people to aid. It's not like you've got to make a request, go through all these hoops and stuff like that. No, it's very good. Usually, I don't know exactly when they get the email, when Walter or whoever gets the email, but when we get it as the defense, as the decisions committee, it's within a week that the money's out, into the hands or being transferred, depending on what all the, whatever hoops that we have no control over. So yeah, it's really efficient, and it's really actually, so I've mentioned to you, Yvette, before, myself and some other comrades who are actually in the chat right now are starting up a mutual aid network to push for general strike, genstrike.org, if anyone wants to check it out. We are actually looking at basing our donations model off of Antifa International, our donations and funding, because we're also looking to start funding people in need during housing crisis, things like that. So we're really impressed with how Antifa International has been set up. Do you, and anything I ask, by the way, I think I've got a clear idea of what you want to avoid and what's okay to talk about. Anytime if I say anything that's potentially out of anywhere you want to talk about, just say no, thank you. And I'll move on. But do you want to talk about how did you get first in contact with Antifa International? So you were saying, they reached out to you. Do you want to say what kind of work you've been doing on the Antifa International? If you want to talk about by all means, by any means necessary.
Sure. So I'm a national organizer with the Civil Rights and Immigrant Rights Group called BAM, and our full name is long. It's the Coalition to Defend Affirmative Action, Integration, and Immigrant Rights, and Fight for Equality by Any Means Necessary. BAM for short. So you have the long version of the short version. And as a civil rights and immigrant rights organization, we have been very, very determined to also stand up against the growth of the alt-right and fascist organizing, especially under Donald Trump. So in 2016, as Trump was running for the Republican primary or the Republican nomination, so even before he was the final candidate, he was touring. And as he was touring, he was campaigning on just vociferous xenophobia and immigrant bashing and racism. And so he was getting a lot of, especially right-wing fascists in California going. So there was, I think, a demonstration in Anaheim with the Ku Klux Klan in February 2016. And that was where there were anti-fascists, I wasn't there, who were stabbed by KKK and Nazi protesters. The anti-fascists ended up hospitalized and they ended up getting charged. And it was, at the time, shocking, and I think wasn't clear enough to a lot of us that it wasn't just an anomaly, because I've done a lot of anti-fascist organizing in the past, and nothing has ever happened like that before. And so in June 2016, there was a lot of word going around about two fascist organizations that were holding a pro-Trump rally in Sacramento. And so a lot of people came out for that. I mean, there were hundreds of us. And in that, the protesters who were trying to protest against the Nazis and fascists were very determined and very courageous. But we did not know, and we weren't ready for there to be a repeat of what happened in Anaheim. And we didn't know it until some of us were on the ground with injuries, stabbed. Some people were quite seriously injured and were stabbed multiple times. And in the course of that, I was one of the people who had been injured. And I was sliced or stabbed in my arm and then bashed in the head. So, but I was one of the luckier people who was injured, because some of those who were injured were taken away in stretchers and were like immobilized. So, you know.
Well, yeah, I've seen the video of you and you're talking, and I gotta say, you're a trooper. You're sitting there talking just very calmly, doing an interview. Well, calm as can be in the situation. Very intense, actually, at the same time. But you just got this giant bloody wadded bandage on your head at the same time.
Yeah, I have to say, I watched that video now, and I'm like looking at my eyes, and I'm thinking, oh, I had like all those, what are those chemicals that go through your body as you're injured, and they give you energy?
Like adrenaline and endorphin.
Adrenaline, exactly.
Yeah.
That was what that was. I'm like, whoa. I look like I'm about to fall over, because I think I was about to fall over.
Well, if you had, no one could have blamed you. Jeez.
Yeah, no, but people were great. I mean, there were people who were, you know, medics who I don't even know who they are. And I don't know if I ever will know. I think I met someone later who told me they were one of them. And, you know, of course I didn't recognize her at the time, but I mean, they were great. They were really truly heroic. So
it's amazing how, like, with EMTs or medics or doctors or even firefighters, you really feel like usually everyone's response is, wow, they were just great. They helped me out. Police.
No, that was
there's much less of that in a post-reaction interview, you know.
Oh, absolutely. No, and the medics who helped me were people who were not EMT, because I wasn't that seriously injured. I didn't go in an ambulance. No, it was medics who were, movement medics,
Yeah, yeah.
people who were masked up, who were very, very professional and really on top of everything and helped so many of us out. I think they saved lives because they were there even before probably the first call was made to the emergency, like to the hospital. I mean, I'm sure they saved people's lives that day. The
Yeah,
cops,
I think, yeah, go ahead.
that's right. The cops did nothing but stand there and let us get
Yeah,
set.
I've seen the video.
They had a policy, and that was to allow the fascists to go at us and hope that the fascists would do what clearly a number of them
Absolutely.
probably.
And that happens, and like they let it happen, and they're hoping it'll happen. And we saw it in, when I interviewed Star, who was in the Virginia attack.
Charlottesville.
Yeah, in Charlottesville. She had her spine broken, both her leg, or I'm sorry, their spine broken, both their legs broken. And there's a great. Let's see if I can.
Jeez. They had their spine broken. Were they by the car?
Yeah, by the car. They were hit by the car. I don't even know what to search for. I probably won't be able to find this image. Let me look real quick. It would just take too long to find. Anyways, there's this great video or picture of her, of them. God, there's a great picture of them. I think like less than 6 months later, being taken away from a new rally, from another rally, in a stretcher, like middle fingers in the air.
Wow,
a real trooper. But yeah, that's how they got in contact with the Antifa International Defense Fund. They reached out to them as well.
Yeah.
So when you mentioned a lot of the people that were helping you out were other activists, I think that's a really important thing that people have got to get kind of in their heads and get the optics. I don't think it's so much on activists to change their optics. I think it's on us, on the viewers, on the spectators, to change our optics of what's going on. These people and most of the people at the rallies I saw weren't doing black bloc. They were more or less open-faced. Some of them were covering, but any of them, we've all got to realize these are just people. If you took off all the masks of any Antifa soldier, of any black bloc, you're just going to see you and me. You're just going to see a human that said, I can't sit by while people call for genocide. And even within that, 90% of Antifa action is not violent, is doing mutual aid, caring for others. I mean, if you ever go Google like different like organization pamphlets and things like that they're passing out to each other or out to the public to get more people involved, they're all about like food pantries and aid and all these different things that have nothing to do with violence. And the violence is necessary when violent people creep up.
Yeah, I mean, in reality, it's about violence or not, it's about self-defense. And when, in Germany, leading up to World War II and leading up to the death camps, the fascists and Hitler did not promise that they were going to kill 6 million Jews.
Yeah.
But they did make clear what their political beliefs were. And many anti-fascists at the time did recognize their danger, but a whole lot of people didn't. And a person could say that maybe back then the anti-fascists wouldn't, and many people, and I think a lot of people are anti-fascists, whether they call themselves an anti-fascist or Antifa or not, they didn't have the experience that we do now, but we do. And I firmly believe that it is incumbent on every person who stands against fascism, whatever their political identity or whatever they call themselves, has to organize and has to unite together in action to shut them down and stop them.
Absolutely.
If Hitler said that if they had stopped when they were small and his people were laughing at them and saying, I would just ignore them, they're just, blowhards. He said they could have been stopped then, but they weren't. We have to draw those lessons now. And especially with what's happening across the world and the right wing growing and nationalism and the nationalists growing, right now we still have a chance to stop them, but we better before it gets too late.
Yeah, that at least half the interviews I saw, or like the newsreels after your incident, were like, they would say, Felarca said that it was in self-defense, but these videos prove otherwise. It's like, no, it doesn't, because there might have been. First of all, you can easily cherry pick which hit is being thrown, but also it doesn't have to be immediate. It is stopping. It is a small attack on a single or a few individuals to stop a very large and deadly attack amongst millions possibly later. It's to, I think you've used it a lot, it's shut it down. And that's what we have to do, is you have to make legally, in any way you can, you have to make it too much work and too much worry for anti-fascists to go out the next time. And there's been proof of this. There's been a lot of proof that this works, that a lot of anti-fascist, or a lot of fascist organizers will say, it's just not worth the work. No one's hearing us because we're getting silenced before we can even get 10 minutes of a good march in there. We're worried about our bills, our if we get hurt. So it works. It's not just a gang war. It's not just thugs.
Definitely not. No, it's about building a movement. And people who come out whatever, they don't have to be on the front lines or not. If they come out, the more people who come out, the more we can shut them down. And they're never coming just to say a set of things. They're trying to recruit. That's why they come out. And they want to show that it's safe for them to come out from the rocks that they hide under all the time. And that, they're trying to attract more people who are angry and disaffected, give them false answers of racism or anti-Semitism or immigrant bashing or, homophobia, and get them to not just think or believe certain things or even some racist laws, but they're trying to get them to take direct action against us. And so if we can show that it's actually not respectable, it's not okay, it's not something that people will accept, and that we won't just protest kind of symbolically across the street or, a mile away at some alternative park, but we're going to be there where they plan on coming, because we recognize that they are there to take action, whether it's immediately that minute or whether it's to gather enough of their supporters to them to take action later on that day. I'm glad you mentioned Charlottesville. That just showed irrefutably. Yeah. If they get enough of them together, they will kill people. And so to me, after Anaheim should have made it clear, Sacramento should have made it clear, but Charlottesville made very clear. It is incumbent on everybody to just come out and unite together, to not let them even take up space, not just to speak, but to attack us. If they have to be scattered, then that's a success for us.
And I always kind of think about, what if there were no, or maybe that specific incident wouldn't have had anything particular to talk about, but what if there were no Antifa activists at Charlottesville? Yeah, like I said, maybe there would have been no conflict because there's no one conflicting with them, but then the next one would have twice as many people, and the next one would have 4 times as many people, and they would be everywhere.
And they definitely have been attacking. I mean, they were marching by. They were terrorizing worshipers in synagogues who had to lock themselves in. Those were not people who were protesting. I mean, they were terrorizing Black folks in Charlottesville who were not protesting, but who were simply there. There's no question. They were there to attack people. It was not, they were there to bring the conflict. And because there were so many people who came out against them, at least they actually were not able to kill as many people as they clearly wanted to. No, it's so important that people had come out. We just need to make sure that we draw that lesson every time.
And so I was wanting to ask, what right now things have gotten things have been changed a bit thanks to the virus. And as a matter of fact, I was going to get in touch with you probably at least 2 weeks ago, maybe closer to a month ago. But even for me, everything's been changed around. What can we do right now? You know, it's not it's not publicly safe to march. Luckily, I think I haven't heard much news on fascists doing it either, so that's a good thing. But what can we do right now during the pandemic?
There's, I think, different ways to still show and have our voice heard. One of the things that my organization is fighting for, BAM has started and launched a campaign to call for free testing of the coronavirus that's universally available, that's systematic and regularized, because in the United States, like, the dearth of testing for anybody, even people who show symptoms, is just unconscionable. It is shameful in a nation as wealthy as the United States that you cannot get tested, even if you've been exposed to somebody who has been tested positive.
Yeah.
In California, it's even worse because we're the richest state in the nation. Our population is the 5th largest in the world. And yet, for every 10,000 California residents, only 7 have been tested and gotten their results back. 7 out of 10,000. And that's compared to New York, which has 96 residents out of every 10,000. And that's not even enough.
Yes.
So we started a campaign. We have a petition that we've launched on change.org. We would really appreciate anyone's support on it. You can sign it whether or not you live in California or not, because if it's not going to happen in California, it's not going to happen anywhere. But it's I can put
if you have the link.
I could look, but
Do you know what the name of the petition is?
I think it's free mass testing. God, I'm so sorry. I should know. And if I'm going to
no problem.
I know I have it somewhere.
Let's look up here. In Philadelphia. So free mass testing in California, maybe?
Maybe. I really should know this. I think it's on BAM.com.
Oh, BAM.com?
Yeah, I think it's on there. God, I hope so. But I'll definitely, I can share it with you after this if you want to share it with people after.
All right, sure. Well, I will, at the very least, share BAM.com in the chat.
That'd be great. Thank you.
And you folks can go look through there. Definitely. I'm quite amazed with this organization already. I'm really happy to talk with someone who's a member of it. But
we do some amazing work. And we also organized nationally car protests around detention facilities because we're demanding that ICE release all immigrant detainees who are being held. There's about 60,000 all across the country. And immigrants who are being held simply because they were caught without papers or because they actually had their green cards, had been arrested for felonies and had already done their time, but because Trump was trying to get his deportation numbers up, he had like thousands of people rounded up, even if they already had green cards and had gotten asylum. I mean, it's crazy. So for them to be in a situation where if coronavirus spreads in the detention facility, it's a death camp.
Yeah.
And some of the people are being held in county jails. And so we want not only the immigrant detainees released, but we think everybody should be released because nobody, no one should die like that.
No,
No one
I'm
should die.
100% with you on that. I'm a prison abolitionist anyways, but especially now, I would rather have all the criminals out on the street. And I'm not even saying like, I believe that the vast majority of criminals were not criminals to begin with, not what should be considered a criminal. But even the ones who are violent and such like that, I would rather take that chance than just kill a giant percentage of our population. That's my thoughts on it.
Mhm.
If you don't agree with me, and it sounds like Yvette as well, that's fine. And maybe you've got a better plan, but just leaving all these people in there, and especially the detention centers, which not a single one of them is a criminal for at least for why they're in there,
Right.
um, is ridiculous.
No, it's
And
really
yeah, it's already disgusting and inhumane and genocidal to put them all in these detention centers before uh, COVID. But
right.
now it's just directly genocidal. It's
It is
just
great that they
it
have
is ugly.
already the conditions are so bad, they don't even have the right to soap. They have to
No.
buy the soap out of their commissary. They don't even have the right to soap. There were already immigrants dying from the flu and from measles and the mumps because of the conditions in them. COVID is gonna kill every one of them, and there's already been, protests inside a bunch of these facilities. In Texas, there were immigrants who, um, caused enough of a fuss that the prison guards had to, or didn't have to, but they were afraid of an uprising within the detention facility because a whole bunch of immigrants had tried to, like, get free. And in
Mhm.
reality, that's gonna happen more. I mean, there will be more of these kinds of struggles inside these facilities because they have nothing to lose. They're just gonna die otherwise, and it is just a death camp, and so we've been holding protests outside these facilities. We had a car protest in this little town called Marysville like, outside of Sacramento in Northern California. It's like a little town, but we had I mean, I think we woke up that town with, like, cars honking. There's been other protests that we've been part of and supported in San Francisco and other places, and we are definitely committed to doing it again. And just
Yeah.
last on the protests, there was, like, I just read today that there was a big protest in one of the jails in Lansing, Kentucky, or Lansing, Kansas, and where, the inmates ended up, like, taking over some of the offices inside the jail. They locked out the guards. I mean, it was they were not, they were serious about fighting because in that jail, 28 people have already tested positive for
Oh,
COVID-19.
wow, really?
So they know it's just a question
Yeah,
of time.
yeah, that's a match on a brush fire right there.
Absolutely. And I hope more of these struggles happen
Yeah,
inside. They have to. It's the only way that they're gonna get freed, and part of what we're doing with the protest outside is to let the people inside know that they have support from people outside.
absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I say, to everyone out there, like for Gen Strike, we specifically have the big three of debt strike, rent strike, and general strike. Another one that's I think we basically just avoided was because we don't even know where to begin to start organizing or uh, officially supporting like a prison strike. Because I've never been I've been to jail, but I've never been to prison. Um, and yeah, I don't want to take on that and screw it up, basically. But I personally am in full support of prisoners striking. Um, and there's a lot of ways when I think a lot of people hear prison strike, they hear prison break, prison riot. There's lots of ways to strike. There's hunger strikes, there's work strikes. Prisoners do work a lot more than most of us, by the way, people, if you don't know. Um, and for almost nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's modern slavery. So there are lots of ways to strike. I definitely have solidarity. I definitely have 100% support for that. I don't want to give bad information out about how to go about that.
I think it starts our biggest or kind of most developed connections are with immigrant detainees who are being held in county jails. And as they've been finding ways to try to get released, and we can show the support that they have and the more confident that they feel, they're also then meeting people who are not immigrant detainees who, of course, they support them also getting released too. And so do we. So I agree with you that it's not the kind of thing that you can just call for from outside without having someone who, yeah, exactly. Supporting others who are already organizing is totally an option. I agree. So, for us, our thing about it is the people that we know, and if they're working on that and finding ways to fight, then we are certainly supporting them. And while we're also working on some of their cases to get them released.
Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's a big thing a lot of people need to know. In any of this direct action, if you can't, first of all, when we say, or when I say, go do direct action, get out there. If you are physically or mentally incapable of doing that, I'm not talking to you. Like, that's fine. You're the ones we're fighting for. But everyone can support in one way or another. Solidarity is, to me, just as important, because if we can show a united front, if we've just got millions upon millions of people who believe the same thing and showing support and working together, that it would be over. The fascists would be gone if everyone did that just all at the same time, all together in a strong united front. About I think you were saying about the car disruption. I don't know the official name for it.
No, not car
Not destruction, disruption. Yeah.
disruption.
Yeah, not destruction. No, disruption. Yeah.
It's like a car protest.
Car
So
protest.
really, it's like we get a caravan going and we circle the complex or the jail for a couple hours, making a lot of noise and beeping. One that we had in Michigan last week, we know a couple of people inside because our organization is representing them in their immigration cases to get them released. And one of them, his name is Oliver Oshana, is already sick. And this is so crazy because he's got a fever, he has a cough, she's shaking. He reported it. They took him to the whatever medical nurse or something in the facility. And she told him that he has allergies and she gave him Claritin. I mean, it was ridiculous. And so he would not shut up about it because he's that kind of person. He is absolutely someone who will advocate for himself. He had been put on a plane to be deported back to Iraq. And he's a Christian with like a cross tattooed on his neck. So he's like completely obvious what his religion is. He would absolutely be dead in a minute in Iraq. So he fought his way off the plane. I mean, he just yelled and screamed. The cops threatened to, the ICE police threatened to tase him and everything else, but he did not stop. And he did get off the plane. The pilot refused to fly. So he's now back in a place called Calhoun County Jail in Michigan. And so while we were holding our protest outside, he and another man who we're representing were inside, talking to other prisoners, talking to other detainees, kind of doing whatever they can do. It's not easy, so I'm not even going to say what it is that they were doing because I don't want to say anything wrong, but they were kind of having their own representation or way of trying to express their resistance on the inside while we were having the cars circling on the outside. So it was a simultaneous inside and outside protest.
Nice.
So we're going to do it again. You know, the authorities, the prison guards put him in isolation because they separate him out from the other prisoners because they're threatened by his leadership. But he's a pretty fearless person. And so even despite him being put in isolation, he's been finding ways to get messages to us. So we're able to know that he's still right now, he's okay. He's still sick. They're still doing nothing for him. The other detainees, of course, share his fears about getting the coronavirus, and it's probably already in there anyway.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like once they have a confirmation, it's already too late because that means it's already been in there. So they haven't tested him, they refuse to, but we're still fighting for him. And so I feel like that's a model of how can we, it's if you know someone on the inside who's prepared to organize however they can in a way that's safe for them, then if we can show that support on the outside at the same time, then that can help us find a way to get them out. We have filed a motion in immigration court to try to get him released too. And we hope that if we can win it, then that could be a basis in which to then argue and fight to get everybody released. But there have been prisoners who've started to be released early in states, you know, including California and Ohio and even other places that are unexpected like Iowa. So there have been thousands of people released early because of fears of the coronavirus, but it's got to be done on a way more extensive basis. I mean, they should just be freed. All of them should be freed.
Yeah. It reminds me of I forgot his name. There was an American who was deported to Iraq, like I guess we're going on a year ago now, was
Jimmy, who died.
Jimmy, yeah, and he was diabetic.
Yeah.
Sent to Iraq, spoke zero of the language. He lived his whole life in America.
Yeah.
And died on the streets because he couldn't get his insulin. Yes.
Absolutely. No, we've worked with him. We worked with him and people.
Oh, really?
And the guy who took the video was someone we had worked with. And, you know, what they do to people is in detention, they try to drive them crazy. And so they threaten them and they make them sign self-deportation orders. And so the guy who took the video was one of the people who had, you know, regretted having signed his own self-deportation order. But all those guys, it was all the Iraqis, a bunch of them were taken from the Detroit area all in one weekend. And we have on our website a video of a protest that we held because we got word of it really fast. We worked with some of the family members, especially some of like the young women. And the families were like super fearless because it was men who were all rounded up. And so they ICE like had everybody brought to this one place called the Rosa Parks building. Can you believe it? That's what it's called. In downtown Detroit. But we found out where they brought them all. They had charter buses where they filled the buses with the men. And we were able to protest in front of one of the buses and really slow it down. There's a video. It was like, I mean, you could see some of the family members like jumping on the side of the bus, like talking to their father or their brother. And we were giving them advice, like, don't sign anything. We're going to track you down. We almost got the bus to stop. Like it's barely moving. And we were just starting to get people from Detroit to like park their cars and join us. Like it was a Saturday night in downtown Detroit. You know, it was like live and it was gonna get, and people hate the cops there for good reason.
Yeah.
And the police were freaking out. If we had just had probably like a dozen more young people with us, I really think we could have stopped that bus in some way or created a situation where they would have had to have stopped and released them. We weren't, the bus did get through. We didn't take any arrests in that situation, and we have been able to get some of the people freed, but too many of them are still in detention, and a couple of them, including Jimmy, ended up getting sent back to Iraq. But his situation was absolutely heartbreaking.
It was.
It was heartbreaking.
And I think, folks, that's why it's important. And every bit you can do to support movements like this saves lives. It does. It every time, you hear support our troops. This is the support our troops that you really should be paying attention to. Support not just directly and people that identify as Antifa, but also just anyone doing direct action, which in my mind, that's all Antifa, but even if they don't identify as that, to cause disruption and cause resistance against this form of thing. Imagine how many people, it's mind-blowing how many people are being deported and sent home, arrested, for trumped up charges. Imagine how much there would be if there was no pushback. Imagine how how far we would have slipped if no one was saying, we're not going to just sit down with this. Speaking of which, we did get a donation from Camazot's Altar. Camazot's, thank you. It says, some funds from ColorTube. Could you talk a little bit more on how the organizing for car pickets went and some of the proposal? Also for prisoner solidarity, please reach out to IWOC, IWOC, which is also a very good organization. Thank you, Camazot's. That will go directly to the Antifa International Defense Fund. I think we actually already answered your question before I got to your chat. I do think that car pickets are a very useful thing right now because it is dangerous to go outside. You can keep yourself kind of, you'll keep the distance, you'll keep a little bit of a barrier around you, maybe close your AC or something if you want to be extra safe. Still keep on your mask. And you've got a very loud voice in a car, literally.
Yeah, and it takes up a lot of space.
Yeah.
Because the length of a car, I mean, you could have one person in each car. Of course, it's one of the situation you need to have a car, but for those who can, they can represent, it's like 15 people or 10 people standing next to each other is the same equivalent of a car. But we were part of one also in San Francisco that drove all throughout the city demanding to release all ICE detainees. And I mean, that was the main demand, was that the governor, Newsom, who claims to be the big liberal savior, right? I mean, because Trump is so bad, he's presented as the big alternative to Trump. But Newsom hasn't released any of the immigrant detainees. The hypocrisy is really exposed. So we were part of it was like a bunch of organizations that just drove all throughout the city for about 2 hours, including by the ICE headquarters. And so the demand was to free them all, and to shut down the concentration camps, to shut down the death camps. And that continues to be our demand. But like I said, it's our main demand is around releasing the immigrant detainees, but it isn't just that. It's just that because that's so obviously, that's less ambiguous, I think, for a lot of people, because they haven't been charged with any actual crime beyond being caught without their papers.
Yeah.
I think it's the kind of thing that a lot of people who may not be, say, as left-wing as some of us are, it makes sense to them. But it's also where if you do get behind that, then why not also fight for and support releasing all the detainees? Because what are you saying then? Then somebody who was caught dealing some weed should therefore, or whatever, or some two-bit, just someone who's working the streets, right? Trying to survive, they should just die of the coronavirus. That makes no sense. And so to us, it's like a way to also transition to also support releasing everybody.
Absolutely. And I think this is a horrific time. This is, the pandemic is a horrific thing for sure. But within that, I think there is a great opportunity being built right now. and it can be grabbed. It's up for grabs by either side.
Yeah.
We're already seeing evidence of a disaster capitalism coming through with this relief package, which like 70% of it is actually going to corporate bailouts instead of to the people. We were pushing in the Earn It Act, which is trying to privatize and remove internet security.
Yeah, no, Trump,
These,
absolutely. He's going to try to use every authoritarian power he can from this. I mean, the question of whether there's even going to be an election in November,
yeah,
that's, that's coming next. We all know it. The other
Yeah.
thing I was thinking about, something you said about right now the right wing's not coming out because they also are trying to avoid the coronavirus too.
Mhm.
That's true for now, but boy, you can just picture that
Oh yeah.
a couple of months from now, maybe not even. Like when Trump gave, I don't know if people who were listening to this heard, but when Trump gave his first speech about the coronavirus, his first national one, it was so filled with just racism and xenophobia, where he was talking about nests, that there were nests.
And the images of him like scratching out corona and writing in China
I mean,
virus.
I mean, there he was like, I was listening to him and I absolutely pictured like Asian people being pulled out of our homes and beaten by racist mobs. I mean, that is absolutely a sentiment that he was just stoking. And it's no, that we better be fighting for what's needed out of this. If there's anything that screams the failure of capitalism, the failure of imperialism, the way that these different countries and governments are competing with each other over markets around buying tests, or even the federal government in the US is trying to undercut states' attempts to try to buy ventilators or masks. Like, it's so ridiculous. Like, this is when we need to have nationalized healthcare and everything.
Yeah, I was reading they've even resorted to straight up piracy. There have been a Barbados. There was a shipment of masks going to Barbados. U.S. just seized them and said they're ours. We want them, and then they gave them like a compensation for it, which was like didn't even cover the original cost. And I was like, oh well, we got them. It's ours. What are you gonna do?
I don't know if I'm allowed to swear on this program, so I'm not going to. I've been really holding back.
Yeah.
That's why you're just.
No, you're, as long as you don't call for directly doing anything illegal, because
of course I would.
Broadcast. Feel free. This is not like a kid-friendly show necessarily. So.
Oh yeah, I wasn't sure.
Yeah.
Or something. Okay.
But that is a great point. Is that it's a great opportunity coming right now for either side. If you do not act, they will. Right. There is no going back to normal. That is not going to happen. We are either going to come out of this, either we won't come out of it, or we will come out of it either with a stronger working class and a stronger movement that's woken up and realized that all these things that we were told we can't have, we can have, or along with the fact that we are realizing how horribly unprepared our government is to protect us, and we're not going to have any more. Or we can sit back and listen to celebrities sing to us from their houses and just wait for it to roll over and come out into 1984. That's your options. You don't get to go back to normal. Normal wasn't great already. Normal was horrifying. Now you get to either go up or you get to go back. That's all there is.
I really agree with that. And I was thinking about just back to Sacramento and people helping and supporting each other who didn't even know each other. And even people who, like BAM has a definite political ideology and methodology. And we have, had our fair share of bumping heads with people of other different political ideologies, et cetera. But on that day in Sacramento, people were working together and were uniting with each other. And on an international scale, if there's ever a time that's shown that there's no way to address this pandemic right now without some international cooperation and coordination. It's probably going to have to happen through, especially to me, like workers in the healthcare field, really being prepared to start to flex their absolute power that they have, if just to save their lives. And a number of our members also work in hospitals in the United States. And a lot of healthcare workers also in the US are immigrants too. And it's, if there's a time to strike and a time to walk out, it is now. Because
Absolutely.
for all like the patting on the head and everyone's heroes, and of course they're heroes, but
yeah,
there's another thing, but they're there doing their job, but they shouldn't be martyrs. Like,
absolutely. And all of this
die over this.
all of this, like this hero terminology being used, that is by design, because they want you to see them, all these first responders, they want you to see them as brave soldiers, supermen who went out above and beyond. No, they were doing their job, and they are, I am so amazed by them, but they were doing their job. They shouldn't have to be heroes. They should be able to do their jobs and not be victimized by a system that allows them to die.
Right. Kaiser Permanente in California, they've reported like multi-billion-dollar quarterly earnings and profits over the course of the past many, many years. Yet management claims that they don't have enough N95 masks for the people who work there. That is bullshit. It's a fucking lie. It is not true. They just don't want to spend the money. They've already costed out how much they're going to have to pay to their workers, or like to replace some of them. But they're absolutely prepared to let them be, therefore, understaffed, overworked. They're not even testing patients who were in the same rooms with other patients who ended up with getting tested positive for COVID-19. They won't give the patients who they then test to see if they have COVID-19, they won't give them an N95 mask until the test comes back positive, which is sometimes like a week. It is, they're killing people.
Yeah, and Vietnam and Taiwan have already, Vietnam gave 260 million, I think, and we gave 150 million to the US. While handling ourselves.
Right.
And Vietnam is definitely, Taiwan's comparatively small. We're at 24 million people, but we're also a tiny island, so we don't have much space to do much. But why can we keep track of our own people, take enough for our own people and have enough to send out? We turned our factories, we turned them over. This is Trump wants to talk about enacting wartime crisis situation to give him power. He could enact that to do things like this. Yeah, even if he takes over, he's not going to do that.
Right. He straight said, even though he's invoked those powers, he's not forcing any of the corporations to actually convert their production in the interest of combating this pandemic, in the interest of keeping our hospital workers safe, or even just patients safe. He won't do it, and it's bullshit. And I really think that every nurse, every doctor, but also every certified nurse's assistant, every housekeeper, every custodian or clerical worker, this is the time. This is a time to walk out. Every patient would support them if it meant that everybody could come out of that walkout with a safer situation for every single one of them. It's time to flex that power now.
Yeah, actually, I even had a lot of people talk about, China's changing their numbers. They're actually dying all that much. I lived in China for 5 years. I do not like the CCP at all. Like, even if they could fudge it, they are half of what the US is with 3 times the population. You're not fudging that much. But anyways, this kind of, I feel like it works out very well for the West that China is, the federal government is very authoritarian, because it allows them all to have xenophobia. It justifies the xenophobia, and this has just blown it into giant proportions. I have a friend in the USA who is a nurse practitioner who got COVID, saving lives. They do not get any of the pay time off promised because the hospital is not reporting staff infections from the staff for COVID to keep their numbers looking good.
Yeah.
So not only are there more cases in the US than you're being told, and it's in the US, not China, so wash your own feet before you start dirtying someone else's. But this is killing people. Luckily, my friend was very young. He's actually just recovered from it. But yeah, this is pot, kettle black, all that. and yeah, the hospitals, everyone please remember, the hospitals most of them are private. They are money-making institutions, and they are extorting people. If you want to live, pay us to help you stay alive. You've got the guy who bought up an empty hospital and then wouldn't open it unless he was paid like a large sum to open it up.
Oh yeah, in Philadelphia.
In Philadelphia. Yeah. That's ridiculous.
It's just like, no, it is the real exposed ass of capitalism and totally being prepared to sacrifice people's lives on the altar of profit is the ugliness of that, and what it really, really looks like, I think, is becoming more exposed to a lot of people. But we have to organize, because if we don't now prepare for the after of all of this, whatever that's going to be, not only is it going to be worse, but we are going to come out of it in a much more dangerous situation politically.
Absolutely. Yeah, something with the Gin Strike's motto is "Do not act alone," because it is. I don't want any one person to go out into the streets. Probably no one should go on the streets right now. I don't want any one person to tell their landlord they're not going to pay rent, or one person to go tell your boss to fuck off, unless you just it's different if it's a take this job and shove it kind of deal. If you just don't want to hear you, work together, organize. This has to be an organized. It cannot be a strike by declaration.
Yeah,
a strike by declaration only.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
But if okay, where, I guess, assuming a lot of this will be after this pandemic, but and also during this pandemic, if more people wanted to get active in specifically in Antifa activist situations, what would you? I'm walking on eggshells here. Mr. CIA agent watching us, this is how you should know. But what kind of baby steps? So for people that are just kind of waking up and want to do their part and want to get active, where would you say they start? Even if not directly tomorrow, go out and start.
I guess I can only speak on behalf of my organization, but I would say definitely contact BAM, because we are serious about finding ways to build a movement that can weaken or shut down fascist efforts in organizing. And for us, it isn't simply, and I feel like because of the media and everything else, and, when it bleeds, it leads. So at these demonstrations, what's often highlighted are the specific physical encounters between the two sides. But it's never just that. And it certainly does come down to then taking direct action and being there if you can show up. But we have to build a movement, and we've got to build a movement that shuts down and that defeats their movement. And so that starts with organizing, because if we're organized and if we have a clear plan, and a clear theory and objective, then we can have flexibility in how to fulfill that in a lot of different ways. In Berkeley, after Sacramento, um, like for, I don't know, several months, there had been kind of not a whole lot around the question of what happened in Sacramento. Wait, I'm going to go back a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
The protests in Sacramento where I was stabbed was in June. And for the summer, it was, there wasn't much about it other than a lot of kind of the initial scandal regarding it. And there were racists and fascists who that day had called my school and threatened to shoot up students and the staff. And it was really, really scary.
Oh.
It was crazy. And so not a whole lot, though after that it was pretty quiet. But then the school district removed me from my classroom when classes started back up in September. And it was clear that it was in retaliation for what I had done in Sacramento in protesting and speaking out. And so for 6 weeks, I was out of my class, but my students, their parents, my coworkers, people in the community, that was actually the first way I got in touch with Antifa, or Anti-Fascist International Defense Fund, was they reached out to me because they heard that I'd been removed from my classroom. And we built a movement and we protested. We had petitions. People from around the country were contacting the school district, demanding that I be reinstated. I mean, it was really, really something. Some of my former students called and spoke at school board meetings from Mexico City on the phone.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. There was another student who almost called in from Tokyo to call in to speak in support. I mean, it was really, really, really something. And some of the people who were the most effective couldn't be there physically. And it didn't require, I mean, we did shut down several school board meetings. Like, we just shut them down because they were so ridiculous and they weren't reinstating me. But through the course of that 6 weeks, we built a movement and we succeeded, and we got me back into the classroom. And
That's awesome.
I got restored. I got back pay, everything. And that was, one, a victory for me in terms of my job. But two, I really feel like that's a victory for the anti-fascist movement, because it's people being prepared, even if they aren't prepared to be out there themselves, even if they don't know quite what they think about mixing it up, about kind of the frontline work, but they definitely did not support and were prepared to defend me and people like me from being victimized by employers for standing up for our principles and standing up for the defense of, our communities. And so for months, it was really quiet again after that victory. But then the alt-right and Milo Yiannopoulos came to Berkeley because they just felt like they had to just show and kind of give a big middle finger to what was considered the most liberal community in the country. But, the movement came out again. And that first time with Yiannopoulos was really dramatic. I mean, I was like, wow, there were like fireworks, and it was really something. I'm sure people have probably seen video about it. And but a lot of people who were out there the fireworks were kind of like icing on the cake, right? But we're there to protest. And the reason why it was so successful was because there was a lot of people that came out. And having a lot of people there was the number one thing. So all I can say is, how could you get started? I can only speak for my organization, but I'm proud to speak for my organization. Contact us, because there are times when we can't protest for whatever reasons. And sometimes we don't want to build up some of the people because they're like really nothings and they're just trying to make a name for themselves. They're kind of like wannabe YouTube stars of make them, rise in the alt-right stardom or something. And we've deliberately chosen not to protest those people because they don't represent anything but their self-promotion. But there's other two, my bottom line is we make our own evaluation. We are very conscious and try to apply as much conscious as we can. of what we do, how we do it, and why we do it.
Yeah. And I think that's a good point you said is showing up. I think any of them that I've seen, any rallies that have turned violent, n- I would say most, at least most anti-fascists aren't looking to fight. Like they're going out there to protest, to outvoice, and if things go violent, they go violent. Um, so one thing I could say to people, yes, reach out to orgs that you know of, ones that are more militant or more on the streets active, ones that are more organizational. All of those are useful, but also just outside of this pandemic, show up. Like just show up in solidarity, because the more, if there's 10 or 10 fascists and 100 anti-fascists, there's probably not going to be any violence. You know, they're going to be outnumbered. They're going to be overwhelmed. Um, and that's a way you can avoid the actual violence, if that's not, that's your least favorite part of it, you know. So I think, yeah, there are strength in numbers. Also, we got a chat from Christopher Zavo, who is a longtime comrade. Hey friends, how do I join the Antifa team? You have to get in touch, Zabo, with the Antifa leader, John in Tifa. You have to go rise up through the ranks. You get official uniform, and then you'll be set. No, of course, for Zabo knows this, and he's just joking. I know, he's a longtime comrade. But for anyone out there who maybe is not clear, and there is no organized Antifa unit, like collective that's a group that's got a official hierarchy. It's just people helping people is the bare minimum, or people protecting people is at the minimum of it. Again, I want to, because I haven't said it in a while, this is all to raise awareness and donations for the Antifa International Defense Fund, who supplies direct monetary aid to people out there doing direct anti-fascist action. For $20 donations, reoccurring or one time, you can get on the decisions committee, which will let you cast your vote if on who should be the first to get any financial aid. And I've seen a lot of us can see the pot, the amount of money they have. It fluctuates greatly. Why? Because they're using it. They are putting it out to people in need. They're not just sitting on it. There's no like chair board or anything like that. There's no investors, none of that stuff. It's money being put in and sent out as quickly as it comes in, basically to people in need. And these are real people with real medical bills, real legal bills. Anyone who's just joining, Yvette here is one of those. God knows what your situation would be right now if they hadn't been able to help out, you know.
They helped me out. So first, they helped me raise money for my legal costs to also take legal action against the school district when I was taken out of my classroom. But there, they didn't donate money to me. They just helped me raise the money. But that was a lot. I mean, they really, really helped with that. But then after that, a year later, when I was arrested for the protest in Sacramento, and I think it was Mike Williams and Porfirio Paz were also arrested at the time. The three of us were arrested separately, but around the same incident. But the International Anti-Fascist Defense Fund helped me raise money to pay for my bail. And it was so helpful. I mean, they really, and there was they were completely transparent about it and very, very efficient in how quickly they did it, and it helped a lot. And then a year later, as I was preparing to go to trial, and I was, had to pay legal fees to get my motions together for a preliminary hearing, and to try to get the charges dismissed. they also made another donation. I mean, they were just
Oh, that's great.
so helpful, and again, they were really quick, and I'm also now on the decisions committee too, because 'cause I'm, like, trying to give back how I can, and so, um,
That's awesome.
I've made my contributions where I can and, certainly wanna do whatever I can to help other people. So, anyone who is, can get in touch with other people, or if you can help with a donation, the fund is, everything that they raise
Yeah.
goes toward people who absolutely just were victimized for doing the right thing, and specifically to help them with their legal cases, to get out of jail or to pay off legal fees, or other costs that were incurred because of legal actions that were taken because they had stood up and tried to do the right thing.
Yeah. And this, um, that's one of the reasons why more people don't stand up is for fear of repercussions to them. And if more people start to know that that we've got you as as a collective, as a community, as a movement, we've got you. If you are injured, we're going to help you out with that. That's not only in and of itself is a beautiful thing to help those that do direct action, but as farther reaching implications, more people are going to be less afraid to start standing up when they see injustice, knowing that there is that much more of a cushion if something bad does happen to them.
Yeah.
And you folks out there, every single one of you can be like Yvette and myself. You can be on the decisions committee. You can get an email every time there is a new request. You can discuss and talk about if this person meets the qualifications, or how much should be donated, things like that. You can help shape how that works with just $20 one time. Reoccurring donations are the best if you can afford it, though. I know everyone is struggling right now. God knows I am. So I know if you can't show solidarity, share it with people. The description of this video has a lot of the information about a donation link and their WordPress, so you can see all the new cases coming up. Speaking of which, we did from Comedian. If that's Comedian WW, hi Comedian. If you're not Comedian WW, hi new Comedian. You donated $10 with no message, but thank you. That is $10 that will go directly to the Antifa International Defense Fund.
Yeah, and it really worked. I mean, for me, I won my case, and me
Yeah.
and Mike and Porfirio, we ended up not having to go to trial. Even though we had all originally been charged with felony charges and misdemeanor charges, and pretty high misdemeanor charges, in the end, we avoided trial. We have to do is we pled no contest to unlawful assembly, and after completing so many hours of community service, it's going to be dropped from our record.
That's great. That is so good. I'm so happy to hear
So,
that.
oh yeah, that was that was really, really, really important, and the fund totally helped with that victory. So there
Yeah,
was
and
lots
I
of that.
love I actually just saw that this morning, because I was pulling up a couple articles on you real quick just to skim over them before the interview. Um, like at least two of them were like, and she got away with only community service. Like, like this viciousness to want to punish people is ridiculous. This like it's like whatever's happened already happened, first of all. But she must pay is and I think even like, okay, so yeah, Antifa activists can be violent and self-defense violent to fascists, but anyone out there who's ever watched Philosophy Tube, and Ollie Thorne's got a great video on Antifa, I highly recommend it. If not just to stare at Ollie, he's dreamy. I'm gonna paraphrasing. He says, the thing is when anti-fascists come and you are immigrant or LGBTQ or any of those things they don't like, um, or let's say it the other way around. If you are a fascist and you come up to an Antifa member, Antifa soldier, you can go, you can walk away. You could say, you could drop down your flag and say, I'm leaving. I give up. I don't want to be, I'm going to go home and I'm going to think about what I've done. And the Antifa members are going to leave you alone. You're not their target like that. They're probably not going to like go hang out with you. They're not going to be best friends with you. But that situation's been diffused. But if you're an LGBTQ, gay, Black, immigrant, Jewish, anything like that, anything outside of their accepted race boundaries, there's no just stopping it. Your choice is to not exist, is the only thing you can do to make them happy. They either lose or you die. That's how it breaks down. And that's why when people try to conflate, well, there's violence on both sides, it is not the same thing. Yeah.
No.
It is absolutely not the same thing.
Not at all. Not at all. And some of them are really open about what they stand for. They don't pretend that they're for anything but our death.
Yeah, absolutely. And we have 2 more donations that just came in from Sin Trees. I think it's Sin Trees. 2 of them actually for $5 each. This is a dono in solidarity for Camazot's stream. Thank you, Camazot's. Yes, Camazot's is also simulcasting this on his Twitch channel. I want to know what I can do to help people who are in the same position as myself. I filed for unemployment over 3 weeks ago, and it's still processing. How are we going to pay our bills? I wish I could tell you the answer to that as far as actually getting money. I don't know if you've got any experience on that.
I've been lucky enough that my job, I still am getting paid because my union was able to negotiate that. And there's now over 6 million people who filed for unemployment in the US, and in California, I think it's like 3 million alone and counting. So I don't know what can be done to move it along faster, but I have a feeling that at a certain point, Trump is going to reopen the economy, or different governors in different states, and I don't know what state you're in, are going to like partially reopen society because of the economic pressures. But the only thing that is standing between like riots and from people like yourself who are not getting their checks fast enough and who are in desperate situations, and that not happening is simply the relative newness of this situation around the coronavirus and people, like really trying to do what they can to protect themselves by staying in. So the social distancing. But at a certain point, that's just not going to be possible. And, I know that there's different organizations that are trying to help with, like, I don't think there's much I don't know about unemployment checks, but around, making sure people get food, at least some of the minimum what they need. And there's like a bunch of like ads that I've been hearing or, programs or organizations that do that. But,
Food Not Bombs is a great one to check out. Food Not Bombs. Yeah, I wish I had an answer. And this is what's so heartbreaking is I'm in the same boat. Even over in Taiwan, I've lost a lot of my job hours, my teaching hours, because just the parents are pulling their kids out of school for safety. And yeah, I get nothing from the government because I didn't file a 2018 tax return. I pay Taiwanese taxes. And at least I'll survive this. I'll be okay. I just think about like homeless people or people who didn't file taxes for whatever reason in 2018 that are starving, and it breaks my heart, to be honest. But what I don't know what to tell you. I wish I had an answer for that. What I can tell you for a more long-term thing is strike. And not alone. Start, if you're not in a union, get in a union, join the IWW. It takes 10 minutes on iww.org, redcard.org. or join your local trade union, join orgs like Food Not Bombs, John Brown Gun Club, places like that, that will help you start to organize. And the only reason why they can get away with giving you a $1,200 bribe one time and just being saying, hey, we did it, while pushing in all their own stuff, and then taking forever to get that to you, taking forever to get unemployment to you. The only reason why they can get away with that is complacency. The longer we just sit here and allow it. And I would, if it was any other time, I would say take to the streets. I would, I would say start organizing rallies all over the country. The only reason I'm not saying that now is to keep social distancing. I definitely, but that's not the only way to make your voice heard. My point. You can start striking, start doing rent strikes, get together with your tenant, like if you're in a tenant union, or get together with other tenants of the same landlord, and all work together. Go to genstrike.org. We've got some templates that you can send, putting your information and send it to your landlord. If you do it by yourself, they're probably just going to ignore you. If 30 people do it, they're not gonna take the chance. And we've seen it happening. Almost 1/3 of American renters did not pay their rent for April.
Yeah.
It's happening either by coincidence that they just didn't have it, or organized strike. People are starting to feel, people that control us are starting to feel the burden. So yeah, if you can't get out there directly, this is how we start to change that. I'm sorry, this is an interview for you. I'm kind of got a soapbox there for a minute.
I think it's completely true. It's absolutely true. And plus, you're already in wherever that apartment or building that you're in. It's gonna,
Yeah.
you and the other people, like you are literally occupying it.
Yes, exactly. Actually, in LA, there was a great what was their names? It's a committee of homeless people, or homeless people and organizers that have started squatting in empty houses and taking them over. Yeah,
right.
I think that's amazing.
Yeah, and more of that absolutely needs to happen.
Yeah.
That's for sure, especially now.
For those out there who might not know, there are 6 times as many empty houses in the USA as there are homeless people. That's right. If the homeless population grew 600%, we would still have enough empty houses to put them in. We can't, because they're in the hands of private owners, sitting on them for either speculation or just waiting to rent them out. And that's ridiculous.
Yeah, no, in the Bay Area, they say for every homeless person, there's 7 empty houses, just in the Bay Area alone. And the rent's crazy over here. And you know what's still happening now here in the Bay Area is construction. Expensive.
And they're not building small, affordable houses,
No, I'm telling you.
I saw an article one time that was these 5 castles are cheaper than downtown San Francisco condos. And literally, they would have like this German castle that's up sale for like $10 million, and it would be cheaper than some luxury condos.
I totally believe it. I'm telling you, it is. It's gotta happen. The revolution has to happen. Well, I want to thank you, Redbeard. I so apologize. I want to thank everybody. I'm gonna need to get going in a little bit.
No, I was about to say you probably need to get going, because we're actually an hour and a half in. You said you had an hour, so
yeah,
we've definitely gone over that.
Yeah.
But I'm so happy to talk to you. I've been wanting to talk to you for a while.
Thank you very much for doing this.
Yeah, and I'm so happy to be a part of the Antifa International Defense Fund. You folks out there can go join just as easily. $20, and you are fully fledged decision committee member. Rotating is always better. The more you can donate, the better. Think of this as funding the revolution, if you want,
Yeah, and especially now when it's so much harder because we can't really protest physically, and or if you're someone who was going to have trouble doing that for a variety of reasons, whatever they may be, it's a way to be directly involved. And you also learn a lot because, as a member of the decisions team, you learn about each proposal, and you learn about all the great work that people are doing and really courageous work that people are doing all over the world. Like we get
Absolutely.
requests from everywhere. Like it's not just the US or not
Oh
just
no, I would say less than half of them that I see are from the US.
yeah, they're from Europe, they're from Asia. I mean, they're everywhere.
Mhm.
And from Russia. So, I can't say enough good about the importance of the fund and whatever anyone can do. Thank you to everybody who made donations already. And if you can't do it now, keep us in mind, and that way you can make donations in the future.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, Yvette, I thank you so much for coming on. I've been wanting to talk to you
You
for a while. This has been great, actually.
Thanks.
Um, so I'll let you. It's starting to get late there, so I'll let you go. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks a lot.
All
Thank you.
right,
Really appreciate it.
bye.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for coming and chatting with us today. Again, I know it's difficult right now. I know um, that we're all hurting financially, and if you have nothing to give your solidarity. You've always got your solidarity. Promote it. Look in the description. There are links to Yvette's story. I will put links to BAM in there as well now. If you don't know, I'll put it in the chat right now. So in the meantime, so you can get involved with them by any means necessary is BAM. That's who Yvette works with a lot, and that's where she got in her legal troubles doing direct action. You can go to the WordPress for Antifa International Defense Fund, check out their information. You can also click on the Action Network link to donate. Again, $20 donation gets you on the on the decisions committee. You get to be a member. You get to be a part of everything that's going on there as far as helping people and getting funds to them. If you don't have the money, I understand. Just show solidarity. If you do, please donate, because these people out there need it as well. And the fascists are not going to stop being fascists. They're not putting their work on pause because of the corona. And like Yvette said, even if they're not marching as much right now because of this, just wait until this is over. It's like holding back the bulls, and then sooner or later it's going to be released, and there's going to be that much more of an explosion. So that can be for them or it can be for us. And I would much rather it be for us. So, all right, folks, thank you so much. And stay safe out there, and keep active. Thanks, folks.